Good evening from New York. For roughly 5 years of absolute Republican majority, its definition of bipartisanship was, you must do what we tell you. For roughly 5 weeks of absolute Republican minority, its definition of bipartisanship has been, you must still do what we tell you. Our fifth story in the countdown, the GOP today still insisting it had no input into the stimulus package, even though more than one-third of the bill President Obama signs into law tomorrow is comprised of the Republican panacea, tax cuts. And oh, by the way, 2 House Republicans have now issued press releases taking credit for spending measures in the bill they did not vote for and claimed their party had no input into. The stim delivered to the president at the White House at 12:46 Eastern Standard Time this afternoon. President Obama returning from his holiday weekend in Chicago. For the half day in the office around lunchtime, he'll travel to Denver tomorrow, carrying the stim with him to sign the bill some 1,500 miles away from the Capitol. The once but not future Republican nominee for president, Senator McCain, missing only that green screen behind him when he seemed to say, that's not change that you can believe in.
It was a bad beginning. It was a bad beginning because it wasn't what we promised the American people, what President Obama promised the American people, that we would sit down together. Look, I appreciate the fact that the president came over, talked to Republicans. That's not how you negotiate a result. You sit down together in a room with competing proposals. Almost all of our proposals went down on a party line vote. I hope the next time we will sit down together and conduct truly bipartisan negotiations. This was not a bipartisan bill.
Next time? You think there'll be a next time? As we like to say around here, Senator, good luck with that. At your next party caucus, you might want to reintroduce yourself to Susan Collins, Olympia Snowe, Arlen Specter. Those 3 Republicans having negotiated the stripped-down version of the stim, still chock full of tax cuts that likely would not have survived a filibuster without them. In the House, Republican Whip Eric Cantor gloating over the legislative failure of his own party, his website reading, the House GOP is back. And linking to a web video celebrating the achievement that is set to Aerosmith's Back in the Saddle, streaming right-wing buzzwords like acorn that don't have anything to do with the stim. Meanwhile, back in the Senate, McCain's mini-me, Senator Graham, who earlier this month tried to claim that the president had been AWOL on the stim, actually uttering the words, "This is not change we can believe in," to ABC before doing his best imitation of Lloyd Benson.
This is going to be bipartisanship. The country's screwed. I know bipartisanship when I see it. I've participated in it. I've gone back home and gotten primary opponents because I wanted to be bipartisan. There's nothing about this process that's been bipartisan.
Time now to call in Washington Post columnist E.J. Dionne, also, of course, senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Good evening, E.J.
Good evening, Keith. You have a lovely name, Keith. I don't care what they say.
Thank you very much. You hitched a ride with the president aboard Air Force One out to Chicago. I enjoyed his phrasing, what he told you, what you quoted him as saying about his approach to the Republicans going forward. The quote was, "You know, I am an eternal optimist. That doesn't mean I'm a sap." How do Republicans like Senator McCain think there is indeed going to be a next time when Obama ever would stick his neck out in quite this same way again?
You know, I was watching McCain and I was thinking it's very hard to play the Dave Clark 5 to Obama's Beatles, for those old enough to get that metaphor. You know, I think that Obama made clear that he sort of did all kinds of bipartisan stuff. He had all those meetings with the Republicans. And in the final package, in his interview with us, all of the things he said he wished were in there and were not, such as more aid to the states, more on education, more on health care, were things he took out of the bill in negotiation with Republicans. There are a lot of tax cuts in the bill. There are tax cuts added in negotiations with Republicans. I think what he's saying is, and he said that to us, look, I'll work with him. There may be some issues on foreign policy I can work with him, but he's not going to let bipartisanship become the test. He talked about it, I think, way too much early on, and that gave the Republicans almost a referee's role. If they didn't vote for it, Obama lost because it wasn't bipartisan. He wants to be judged by what he gets done, whether the Republicans vote for it or not.
And what sense did you get from him about what happens next now that the stimulus is under his belt?
Well, he talks a lot, partly because we prodded him on it, but it's something very much on his mind, about the next phase of the economic plan, which is the process of trying to get the banks back in business. And he was very clear how hard this was. You know, we asked him, why did Secretary Geithner come out with less than a full plan? And he said Geithner's going to be working on this for a whole year. And there was sort of this range from Japan, where they went really slowly in trying to get their banks back together, and they had the 10 lost economic years. He doesn't want to go there. The other end was Sweden, which nationalized the banks temporarily, cleaned them out, and then sold them off. He's resisting Sweden, saying we have many more banks than they do. He doesn't want nationalization. But what was interesting is he didn't rule that out. It's very clear that he knows he may have to take very strong action to get the banks lending again and to get those bad assets off their books.
Friday here, EJ, President Carter was referring to the Republicans as robots. There was a series of interviews that President Clinton did saying that they're on automatic. He said you punch a button and they give you the answer they give you. Adding, he did, as a fiscal conservative, if he had faced the economic situation that President Obama is facing now, he would do exactly the same thing. Is it an important matter at this stage of a presidency that a former president is sticking up so publicly for the current one?
Well, in light of some of the events of last year, it's sort of striking to hear this. But I think Bill Clinton has been exactly where Barack Obama was. In 1993, he had his economic recovery plan. He didn't get a single Republican vote. The Republicans at the time said this plan will lead to a Great Depression, terrible times in our country. And guess what? We had some of the most robust growth with low unemployment, less inequality than we've ever had in our history. So it's not surprising that Bill Clinton empathizes with Obama. And I think it's striking that Obama, partly because of changes in the Democratic Party, is getting even more support from Democrats than Bill Clinton got all those years ago.
DJ Dion of the Washington Post and the Brookings Institution. I always wanted to go by my initials, too, but it would have been KT, and that just doesn't work for a guy. As always, EJ, thanks a lot.
Good to be with you.